Hey, everybody. Can you believe it's Monday again? Hi, I'm Tina Frank, and welcome to Splintered Grace. I'm a mature Christian woman, and I'm here to have an amazing conversation with my co hosts.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Bonnie Violet here. I'm a transgender queer drag queen and an aspiring roller skater.
Oh, I forgot to add my title. I was fretting about that before we started, and I forgot. Oh, well.
You can add it now.
I didn't know what I was going to say anyway, so it's
Right. Good morning, Charlie. Glad you could join us again this week.
Yay.
All right. So, how was your weekend?
Oh, you know what? I had a good weekend. I had lots of busy things to do. We're working on our project still in Santan, so that took the bulk of my weekend. I also got to play some games with some friends of ours too. They've got this new game. I'll tell you about it real quick. It's called Fast Track. I've never played it before. It's like Sorry meets cards, and it's so
Like-
fun. And you play in partners instead of individuals. So fun. We had a great time.
Like Uno or like a deck of cards?
Like a deck of cards. So you've got like this big sorry board, and it's got like 8 colors on it. So you can actually have 4 teams, and you partner up with someone. And the goal, of course, like sorry, is to get everybody around and into their safe space. But you have to do it with these cards, the deck of cards. And the deck of cards have all different types of scenarios in addition to the numbers. So it's just it's kind of fun. We laughed and laughed and laughed, but it was a lot of fun.
I'll have to check it out. It's called Fast Track.
Fast Track, yeah. It's pretty cool. I'm going to have to see if I can get one for us because Dan and I just really loved it. So
It looks like your place is getting together, the one you're getting ready to sell.
Yes, it looks nice. Had to put sod in, and we took it on ourselves, and oh my goodness, my body still aches.
Oh, wow.
So but it's so worth it. It's so worth it to be able to sell it and help to a family that we know is going to love it. It's just going to be amazing. We're excited about it.
Nice.
And we also I got to be at church in our new building yesterday. So
how was that?
It was amazing. We're still working out a few bugs, but it's awesome. It's very exciting.
Is it your own space? Because I know you guys left a school. Do you now have your own building? Are you sharing it?
No, I shouldn't say unfortunately. We are blessed to move into another school. It's a larger space. We have not yet found a place to actually build yet. So that'll be in the future, we hope.
Yeah.
It seems like school that we are in is really awesome.
Nice. It seems like at least a lot of the churches that I'm aware of too, well, especially with COVID, but during shelter in place, a lot of places actually just stopped having a physical location. But a lot of with the churches that I was involved with, Chicago, we did like things where they just rented a space in like a place for seniors to live. Like we would do church in the auditorium once on Sunday, and then so they just kind of like rent space for the actual service rather than just having a space the whole time. Because it can be a lot of, one, it's a lot of money, and two, then unless you're really using the space well, I think a lot of times the space just stays open.
Yeah, you're right. And that's kind of why we're in a school, because we can just rent it by the hour for the time that we need for us to get together at church. So the new space gives us more space to put more people in, which is always nice. And as we grow, we want to have all those people be able to come in. We also got a couple classrooms so that we can do some things for our kids, which is nice in that space. And they're also giving us opportunities during the week if we choose to rent the space. And the other place did not give us that opportunity.
Nice.
So anyway, it's a move forward. I'm excited about it. It's very exciting for us, especially since we're such a little church, to be able to grow in that capacity during such a crazy time.
Yeah. Well, congratulations.
Thank you. So it was a great weekend. How about you? How was your weekend?
My weekend was good. It was pretty busy. Just, I'm still, practicing with the girl group. We're getting ready to hopefully film and make our music video in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
You're going to share that with us, right?
Oh yeah. Once it's all done. And then I started my lacing your narrative with the Spiritual Thread workshop series. And so that's been a cool exploration
I
to
saw
kind of
that a
like,
couple times this weekend. That's amazing.
yeah. And I think some of the processes looking at my childhood and looking at my time growing up, I guess in church and high school, because that's where we're focusing on this week is, what did we learn about religion or spirituality as a child? And so kind of in reflecting back at that, I think for me, it's like, where does my sexuality or, the way that I exist now, how did that fit into my childhood? And if it didn't, maybe why didn't, or what parts, or just really kind of exploring that a little bit, because I know at that time in my life, I couldn't even imagine being the person that I am today,
Isn't it funny
So
how
that
things shift as we grow up?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yep. And so that's what kind of led me to us thinking about talking about sexuality today.
Awesome.
So we have opted to take on have an opportunity to talk about sexuality and spirituality. And I think that these two things are probably things that often I don't think people think they can exist together, or that there could be some clashing. So I think it's a really great opportunity for us to kind of talk about it.
Yeah, I think it's always good to talk about things, especially if there are things that we don't quite understand.
For sure. So I was gonna put a.
That sounds good. Well, sexuality is a tough topic. And as we are working here to work through some technical difficulties, bear with us, you guys. So what we were able to find was an opportunity for us to expand this definition out. We found that both of us have kind of a narrow interpretation or definition of sexuality. So what we did was we went through Webster's, because we figured that's a safe spot, and we picked out, we looked at all of those definitions and we made them available. We're going to put them up a little bit at a time so that we can share those.
Sorry, I disappeared for a second.
It's all good. So you can't manage all those technical things all the time.
Yes. So yeah, just so folks know, I'm having a hard time with my internet connection today for whatever reason. So, all right. So, sexuality is about your sexual feelings, thoughts, attraction, and behaviors toward people. So it's not just about sex, baby, I guess. You can find other people physically, sexually, or emotionally attractive. And all those things are part of your sexuality. And sexuality is diverse and personal, and it is an important part of who you are.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. So that's the definition that when we looked it up, that's what we came up with. And so that's what we want to talk about today, and how that relates to each one of us based on who we are as family members or people just doing life together. And we thought it'd be awesome to have a conversation with you guys as well.
Definitely. And I think Landa has a great way for us maybe to start off the conversation. Landa Lake says, I've always felt that people often want to think of spiritual people as devoid of sexuality. Seems like people are struggling with hearing.
Yeah, looks like we got two here that says they can't hear. My audio sounds okay. I can hear you just fine.
Yeah, my mic is on.
Well, that's interesting, Landa. Spiritual people devoid of sexuality. That's not something I had ever experienced, especially as a spiritual person. Sexuality is, like we talked about before, it's an attraction. It's a drawing to other people. And it doesn't always have to be sexual, but it comes along with it, especially when you find someone that you decided to do life with or to be in a relationship with in that capacity. So that's interesting.
It's just me that they can't hear.
Ah, okay.
So I'll try to switch again. Okay. I don't know what else to do.
So please bear with us, you guys. Bonnie's trying to get her sound worked out. So we're going to do another switch up here. So you may have just me for a moment. So I hope you don't mind. But I'll do my best to answer questions that you guys may have, or I don't know, talk about.
Yeah, I think it's working now.
Okay, Landa says she can hear us. Thank you guys for helping us out on that, because we sound fine to one another. We wouldn't have known. We would have been on a silent movie. I do not let us know. Okay, so let's get back to the conversation now that we've been derailed a minute.
Yeah, that spiritual people are devoid of sexuality, which I think is thinking about the sexual behavior as well, probably more than anything.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's, I would say I've spent most of my life feeling like those had to be two separate things. I think especially like as a queer person, as somebody who identified as being gay at one point in time, like I never was, I was only kind of taught that sex was for marriage. And if I wasn't able to be married because I was gay, in my understanding at that time, gay people couldn't get married. And so there was kind of this idea of where does my sexuality, where do I exist in that, and if I'm already like wrong, like what's my sexual, I guess, I don't know if the word is like parameters, if I will, as a queer person, if, heterosexual people have a certain way to be in God's favor, then where does a person like myself fit into that?
So when do you think you had started having those questions?
It's weird because I wasn't a super like sexual young person. So I think I was not like, I wasn't sexually active as a young person. Mm-hmm. I wasn't super sexual. I think church, and I don't know if church was a way for me to kind of like avoid that a little bit. I was kind of thinking about this morning as part of my reflection was like, what did church provide for me? But I think because I was in church and there was this idea of not being sexually active, not having sexuality, if you will, or not supposed to be like acting out on it, that in some ways I think that kept me from seeing who I was sooner. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think I was able to explore or start to see my sexuality or my understanding of myself in the world around me.
So do you think that interaction with the church dictated your, limited your attractions?
I don't know if it was about the church itself or it was also just like me as a younger person that I just wasn't super drawn to that. But I think it probably had a little bit to do with the idea that I probably just wasn't sexually stimulated, if you will. Like there wasn't, like I wasn't in an environment to really kind of show me how I felt. And that's not to say like when I was 16 years old, I had my first sexual experience with a man. And so like, and that for me was a really surprising thing because I'd never thought about sex before or anything like that. And it just kind of was one of those things that it just kind of happened and it felt so natural and it felt so normal. And like it just felt like it took over me, if you will. And I want to say that just in a sense of like, I felt like I knew what to do. I knew how to act. I knew how to carry myself. Like there was this interesting way of like being with myself, but also being pulled by something. And because I didn't have the language for it, after the fact, because of everything that I'd been told, I thought, I struggled sometimes thinking that somehow I was possessed by something that was causing me to do something different. than what I thought was okay, rather than just me having these natural instincts or this attraction that was just a part of me, and me being able to like really connect with that. So I think there was a really, because of what I was told or not told, I kind of was scared and stuck, and I didn't know what to do with that. And I remember telling people that I had sex with a woman, not everyone, but there was like, my cool cousin, I told him that it was with a woman, because I don't know, because I thought that, I don't know, made me a little cool, I guess. I don't know.
There's a little peer pressure in there.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. How about you? What was your understanding of sexuality and spirituality like as a younger person?
They're definitely connected at a certain level, but I always thought attraction or sexuality, I thought I needed to wait until I got married. Although there were certain things that you could do versus things that you shouldn't do and I don't know that I got that so much from church as I got that from my mom and my dad. And they probably got it from their mom and dad and all those things, because that's just how culture was then. So I don't know. I just was always raised that you wanted to not be the person who had sex with a lot of people during high school. You didn't want to have that. You didn't, we always were in fear of becoming pregnant. So that was something that we didn't want to have to go through. So when I started engaging in church, I didn't engage in church until I was in high school. And I was trying to discover myself and figure out where I mixed. I don't know for everybody, but for me in high school, I was really having a hard time trying to identify who I was. Looking at, being such a small town, my graduating class was 35 people. Everybody knew everybody's business. And so either you were in the group or you weren't in the group. And if you weren't in the group, then everyone treated you horribly. So half of my time was all about, what do I need to do to be in the group? So it was a challenge. You probably went through some similar things, because I don't know if the school was much bigger when you graduated. So for me, that was a bigger challenge for me than my spirituality. Once I gave my life to Jesus, that for me, it made it so much easier, much easier. And I didn't really wasn't attracted to a lot of people because I didn't like anybody, because they were mean to me a lot. So
yeah, so my graduating class, or like my class, was about double your size. I think we were about 70 by the time that we were done. So similar, but a little bit different. And, the thing though, I do think that my parents or my family probably informed more of my sexuality than church. As far as like overtly, like I feel like my parents, TNA kind of things in film were like something that we were exposed to, I don't know, at a fairly young age. Like it was like, I didn't feel like my parents were trying to hide sex from us, that sex was just like a natural part of like living. I saw like, like I saw family members making out, or you could tell that people were in love or whatever, but like, so it wasn't necessarily something that was hidden. The only thing was said was, don't get a girl pregnant. Like that was like the big message, I think, from my father, like wear a condom, don't get a girl pregnant. And I think that the way that church told me was because in church, they never talked about people like me. Yeah. So the only narratives and the only people that were in the Bible or were in that way of life were only, white, mostly white. We'll say white because I felt like that was my perception at that time of like white heterosexual people. That there weren't gays, there weren't trans folks, there weren't, I don't even think like, I guess there probably was racial diversity, but at that time I never really saw it or heard it, or it wasn't really talked about. Right. And so I think that's how church told me, is because it said, there's not a place for you here unless you look and act in this particular way. I think that's how it told me that I wasn't worthy or deserving or didn't exist in a, like, I don't know, Christian world.
I get that. There's a lot of old, I don't even know how to say it, legalism in all of us, and it doesn't exclude the church. Some of that is from things that we've experienced, things that we've been taught, things that we've been exposed to. But it's really hard to I don't know, I guess understand, because I so many people struggle with it, that when Jesus came on the scene, all that changed. The legalism is still valuable, it's still worth, but Jesus fulfilled the scriptures. So therefore, all those things that we were taught to stay away from, or to be so rigid about, that's all covered under mercy and love. Now, that's not to say that we got a free pass to run around and do whatever the heck we want.
Right.
If I was to go out and have an affair on my husband, it would still be adultery. It would still be sin. And I'd still have to repent. And I'd still have to walk through the consequences of that decision with my husband and my family. So none of that's changed. The amazing thing is that there's always love there. God is always willing to say, you know what? I forgive you. This sin isn't going to keep you from me. It's not going to keep you from eternity. I remember someone saying before, I was listening to some teaching, because I don't know about you, but I grew up, and not because anyone put it on me, but I took it on myself. And I'm finding out more and more that some of these things I took on myself. We take on shame that doesn't belong to us. And sometimes it's shame based on the legalism. Sometimes it's shame based on our culture. But when we give that all up to God, there's no shame. And someone said once before when I was listening, and they said, you know what? There's not anything that you can do that's going to shock God. Because he knew everything that you had the potential to do, right or wrong, the moment he created you. And I found great comfort in that. So no matter what people say I'm supposed to be like, no matter how they think I'm supposed to act, no matter how I feel about how I'm acting, God can cover it. And he wants to. He wants us to live the life that he destined us to have. Now, we're all going to have different types of attractions, different types of things that are going to take away from our purpose and that plan that God has for us. But God has always provided a way out for us. We just have to be pliable. And I think that we're all on this journey, and we all have a unique opportunity to be pliable in God's hands so that he can fulfill his glory in our lives, because that's at the end of the day what we're created for. So for me, my sexuality falls under what I guess the culture would say is norm, or used to say. I think our culture is very different now than what it used to be. But sin is adultery for me is the same as it would be for you.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm tired of people putting emphasis on things that don't need to be emphasized.
Right. Well, and I think part of it, I think sometimes though, with that sort of like thinking, I think there's a lot of us that then have different sexual experiences before we come to that acceptance or maybe understanding of some of those, like of where I'm at now is different than the way that I saw things before. And when you were mentioning shame, to me, I feel like that's what a big part of the function of spirituality, of God, is the removal of that shame. Because I believe shame is what the world puts on us. It's what, like if I were to have just been with, I guess, spirit, creator, God, just with God, I would have known all along that I was fine. Like it was the world and the environment around me that was telling me something different. And so once I was able to connect with spirituality again, God again, I could then see that I could exist as I was. And yet there might also still be some things I may want to change. Like for instance, like I always say, like, the more I seek God and the deeper relationship I have with God, the more queer I become, the more trans I become, because I believe that I'm becoming closer to how God is continuing to create me. And I think prior to a relationship with God, I wasn't able to do that. Like, when I wasn't as connected, I wasn't able to really let myself out because I was scared of the world. I wasn't scared of God. It was easier to say I was scared of God, but I was really scared of the world. I wasn't scared of my understanding of spirituality even. It was, again, the world that I'm scared of. And it's still the world that I'm scared of today. You know, I feel really good with my connection with my understanding of God and spirituality and creation, as who I am. So I don't know where I was going with that.
I was going to say, has that fear changed? You said you've kind of gone through different phases. Has that fear changed? You said you had the fear of the world around you, but has there been a shift in that?
With the help of God, I have less fear.
Okay.
Yeah.
God is not a God of fear.
Exactly. I mean, I feel like there's also a reality of safety. You know, sometimes there's physical fear that I still have. But as far as like me as a person and my value and my worth, you know, the world don't get to tell me that anymore.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Only God.
However, right. However, I feel like the hard parts are still how the world decides to accept, not accept, like what the world does to me is something I don't have as much power over. And, you know, for me, that's what spirituality functions for, is it kind of helps me be who I am more fully, regardless of what the world is telling me.
I'm just listening. That's interesting. See, to me, spirituality is maybe it's something a little different. I believe that in the spirit, but I believe that I have a relationship with God. And I don't want it to just be a spiritual, emotional thing. I want it to be a lifestyle. I want it to be who I am, is to that relationship with God. And so for me, that means that I'm willing to be pliable in God's hands, not my hands, not the culture's hands, and that I'm going to set the groundwork through understanding more about who God is so that he can manifest his life through me. So for me, spirituality is different. It takes on more of an emotional side. I hear people all the time that say they're spiritual, and I don't understand what that means all the time, because I think it's attached to an emotional thing that they're going through in the moment. Now I have those. I like when I'm at church and I'm in and praising God I have an emotional response, and that to me is spiritual. But at the end of the day, my life with God is relational, and the spiritual is only a piece of that. And the spiritual does not dictate who I am, how I respond, none of that. The relational part does. And so that's why I'm just asking the differences that you've had in that. What does that look like? And how does that affect your sexuality? And how does it affect my sexuality? I think at the end of the day, I'll let you talk for a second, since I've talked for about 30 seconds.
Oh, no. I was just feeling like in your response to that, I think sexuality might be more about the connection with spirit, the connection with our soul, connection with the emotional, if you will, if you want to label it, aspect of the world that folks like me weren't allowed to have. So all we were stuck with was being in our bodies and being in our minds, in our head. Once we can then integrate spirit and spirituality into our life and connect with that, then that affects our head and it affects our body. That doesn't mean that it causes our body not to be attracted to people of the same gender anymore.
Right.
But it might allow us and cause us to think more through how our behaviors, how our actions, how our words are impacting the people around us, maybe a little bit more, and a little bit more like truly like how we're really impacting the people around us, rather than this inability to really perceive those parts of us because we weren't connected with our spirit, our emotional aspects. And I'm not speaking for every like queer person or anything. That I feel like for me, that's kind of a way of expressing what had changed for me, is that I felt like to detach away from this God that I knew God was good with all of this, right? But I didn't know how to be okay with all of this, and because I was able to begin to reach and seek and connect with God, now I can begin to see myself the way that God sees me. And when I can do that, that does cause me to just animate myself a little differently in the world. And that doesn't mean and my sexual behavior and my sexuality can become something that gets in the way of my connection with my spirit and my connection to God. But that doesn't equate to the gender of the person I'm having sex with. Sometimes it has to do with the amount of sex, or who I'm choosing to have sex, or why I'm having the sex. Those are the things that I get to explore and understand. Is this serving me, or how is this serving me? And then what are the effects, or what are the response? Like, what do I want out of life? What do I want to experience out of being here? And will these things get me to that end? Are those things getting in the way of that end, which I believe God wants for me? Then those are the things that I just have to be honest and real with myself of, are there some things that I can let go of that are actually getting in the way of my ability to live more fully and to experience more love and all of that. Landa has a comment. Sometimes when we are when we are insulated, I think sometimes when we are insulated into that relationship with the Creator, I believe for the queer community, there is a confusion of love and shame. Inculcated. I wonder if it is inculcated, and I just don't know what that word means. Sometimes when we're
I'm sorry, Landa, that we don't understand that word.
I think, I get what's being said though, that sometimes when we just are in relationship with the Creator, I believe for the queer community, there is a confusion of love and shame.
That's unfortunate, because there's a big difference between love and shame. Now, we got to remember that love isn't always comfortable, and it's not always easy. We talked about that before. It's sometimes hard. It challenges us to step out of something that we knew, maybe challenges us to do something greater, and to trust that in that love and that step that we must take, that there's going to be something better than we can imagine on the other side.
And Landa clarifies that it means to be infused often by your parents.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that for us.
Yeah. Well, I think that kind of brings up this idea to me that, like, when we refer to God, Creator, the divine, in, I think, human understandings, it's always going to like fall short at some point. Like, I think sometimes when we refer to like even love, like God's love is not like any love that we can explain. And I don't know that God's love has to hurt. I think it hurts because of us. Like, I don't think it's supposed to hurt. Like, God's, do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like our relationship with it is because of us, not because of the divine.
I think you're right. I think we're trying to say the same thing.
Yeah.
But I think that God is always calling us to a better us. And so he's not going to push us. He's not going to make us. He's not going to demand that we do it. He's going to allow us. But in that process, he's going to allow us to walk through some of the negative things that we're going to choose, because we don't choose the path that he has for us. And therefore, he's going to love us, although we're going to walk through some circumstances that may not feel good.
Yeah, which is so interesting, because I feel like so much of our, like, because neither one of us did it all right. And we're still not doing it all right, so to speak.
Right.
And my inability, if you will, to not do it all well has created a lot of good in me, and a lot of skill and ability to love better, to care deeper than before. I don't think I necessarily had to go through those things. Like, I don't think that God gives us those things so that we can learn those sorts of things. I just think that sometimes that's what it took for me, I guess, to come to know that.
Yeah, I agree. God allows us to make our own decisions and to walk through the consequences of the decisions that we make. And he's always right there with us to pick up any pieces that may be left behind or that need to be picked up so that we don't feel stuck in shame or any of those other things that go along with it.
Yeah.
I always have to remind myself that I'm only in this world. I'm not of this world. The Bible says that I'm created for his purpose to be a part of this world, but I'm not. This isn't my destination. And so I don't want to get caught up on the things that this world has to offer. And I don't want to miss out on all that God has for me. And I believe that I have a purpose here. God would have sent me here. And so all these things that we talk about, all these things that trip us up inside the church and outside the church, they're all things that are trying to steal away from us all the purpose that God has put in our life. I'm so amazed that even in the middle of crazy and even my bad decisions and the things that I even said that were because of God, that were not because of God, it was because of my own selfish desires, that God has been able to turn it around so that I can have a opportunity to love someone or to hold someone's hand so that they don't remind them that there's no reason to feel shameful, to come alongside and be his hands and his feet to help someone in need. These are the roles that God has for us. And all these other things that keep us stuck, these are the things that the enemy uses to keep us from fulfilling God's purpose. It's not God's purpose that we even have these horrible discussions or people yelling at one another because of choices that people have made or lifestyles that they've chosen to live. It's God's heart that we could seek after him alone and allow him to manifest his purpose in each one of our lives. It's, life, you look at our lives now and people may think that it's all easy. It's easy for you to say, but it's not always been easy. I've dealt with sexuality issues. I still sometimes look at an attractive man and go, oh my goodness. But that's a sexual attraction. It's the same thing, and I need to not act on that. And not because God doesn't want me to, but because it's not the right thing for my husband either, or for my family, or for myself. Sexual sin is the only sin that desecrates ourselves in addition to the person that we're having it with. And so we need to just remember that. That doesn't mean the attraction's going away. That doesn't mean that culture is not going to entice us to do things we shouldn't do. But, we've been created with the self-control that if we allow God to come alongside us and guide us, that we can exercise that for his glory. And we don't always get it right. And that's why his mercy comes in.
Right. Well, and I think the big thing to that, like the issue is that you have made a commitment to be in a certain type of relationship with somebody. And so to go outside of that is like the wrong, right? Like so like if somebody isn't in that sort of commitment with somebody, then they don't have the same sort of parameters, if you will. However, having a good understanding of what that relationship is with that person and what your commitment is to one another in that circumstance or that situation is something that I think that we all could be a little bit more mindful of in whatever sort of relationships we might choose to have sexually, and maybe thinking more about sexual behavior versus anything else. But one of the things I wanted to bring up too, when you were mentioning this idea of of the world, like versus we are not of the world, but we're in the world. And I think that's a really important thing because I think spirituality helps me be in the world. Whereas without it, I was trying to get out of the world. And I was doing that like with drugs and alcohol and certain ways of living. In some ways it took me out of the world. In other ways it helped me be in the world. And I think I could do the same thing with my spirituality, is that it's important for me not to just live in this like euphoric spiritual space, because I do believe that we're still in the world, right? So like there's a way for us to utilize that spirituality, if you will, that connection to God, to help you be in the world. Because I feel like that's our purpose. I mean, why else are we here if we're not supposed to be a part of the world? But we're here to change the world, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, okay, wait a second. Yeah. Yeah.
But you have to be in it. You have to participate. You have to take part in order to change anything.
Yeah. Well, and I agree. You have to participate, and that participation, as a woman of faith, it has to look different than the participation of someone who's not a woman of faith. So let me give you an example. I was reading a Facebook post from one of my friends this morning. A young woman that I don't have a relationship with her now. She was in my, I worked at the Boys and Girls Club for a number of years, and she was on my volleyball team. We've talked about that. It's been a long time ago. And she's on my Facebook. And once in a while she posts, not very often, but she was saying that she was in the store and she heard this huge crash. And she says on there, because I'm nosy, she wanted to see what happened. But when she got there were people standing around. This older woman had actually ran into an end cap and had knocked a whole bunch of stuff off and broke it. This woman was beside herself. She was crying, she was upset, she was trying to clean up, she was embarrassed, and not anyone would help her. She got right down on her knees, got right next to this woman, encouraged her, and said, "Oh, don't worry about it. Let me help you. Let me help you. Let me help you." See, that's the difference. That's the difference. I don't want to be a spectator of someone's life as it fall apart. I want to come alongside that person, and I want to say, "Look, I'm here to help you. I'm here to come alongside you, and we may not figure this all out today, but let's just clean up the mess for the moment." At the end of the story, the manager came over and said, "Oh, honey, don't worry about this. We have insurance to cover." Because she was like, "I don't have enough money to pay for all this stuff." And he's like, "Don't worry about it. We have insurance for that. And we'll finish cleaning up this mess. Thank you for helping at this point. I hope you didn't get hurt." And those are the responses that we need to have to the people around us. You know, man, I can't imagine being on the sidelines and not offering someone help like that. But that's what I feel like God means when he says we are in the world, but we are not of the world. So we are in the world to come alongside, to love on, to help people, and to lead them to his love and his mercy and his grace. You don't do that standing on the sidelines of someone else's pain, watching them be embarrassed and fumbling around trying to find the right way to respond. It's about being in there with them, saying, "Hey, let me help you pick up these pieces. I'll pick up as many pieces as you want me to help. Let me stand by you right here. I'll wait with you for the manager to come and see if you're going to owe any money." That's the kind of job God has for us. That's the purpose that God's put in us. It's going to look different for each one of us. And I want to be qualified for that. And I don't want my sin to hinder that, although I know that I have sin in my life every single day, not just sexual sin, all kinds of sin.
Right. Yeah, I feel you.
So anyway, sorry I decided to share that story.
No, you're great. You're great. I'm just hoping. I'm hoping that I'm just kind of getting in my head a little bit. I'm worried that the sound isn't coming across well, and I'm a little bummed about that.
Just share what's on your heart to share, and when we're done, it'll do what it needs to do.
Yeah, I know I feel like we're having a good conversation about it, but one of the things I think, because I was really, I feel like this is like in particular, and I don't feel like I think we've talked about sexuality. There's so much more we could talk about, but I feel like a lot of the times sexuality are one of those things that, and for us, actually, it was something that pulled us apart for a while. So I think being able to like talk about this, I think in front of others has been really helpful too. Thanks, Landa, for the encouragement of saying the sound is fine for you. That makes me feel a little bit better. But because recently, and I guess one of the things that we might share is like recently, I've learned that I still have some like suspicion, I guess, suspect, if you will, like
Okay.
certain I think certain Christian points of views, if you will. And it's weird because I'm not going to subscribe, like I don't believe them, but for whatever reason, it still kind of hits some of these things in me sometimes. And so the thing that I would encourage people to do if they are trying to be in relationship, for instance, like you and I are, is that we can really try to have the conversation, even if it feels a little bit difficult, and to be able to share that you're having a difficulty with it. I know that you had sent me a video, say last week or the week before, and it started hitting some of those things for me. And then I was like, okay, well, I can't finish listening to it. And then I remember just getting into my head a little bit of the fact of like, I know that I know her love and her intent for me is not to change me. Like, I know that. However, it clicks these things into me that says, she's trying to change you. She doesn't believe you. She doesn't think you're worthy, as, you know, like those sorts of things. And those are the things that were going in my head. And I loved that you shared it with me, because there was actually a good message beyond that if I was willing to like listen or sit through that. But I also had some fear about telling you, because I didn't want you to feel like I was so sensitive that you wouldn't be able to like really talk with me about these sorts of things. And I felt like it was really important that I was able to say that to you. These certain words or things said in this way causes me to feel this certain way, and this is why. You know, when we hear same-sex attraction, that is a word that's used in conversion therapy. That's language that's used to tell us that the way that we are is wrong. But if you don't know that, you don't know that, right? And so I think I just guess I want to encourage people to share the experience with that discomfort with the person that you've chosen to be in relationship in that way. And it is scary, and it is scary.
I agree, because that same kind of thing is what tore our relationship apart.
Are not talking about it.
Us making assumptions that because of this and this and this person didn't want anything to do with us, or didn't care for us anymore, didn't love us, didn't want to spend time with us, rather than reaching out and saying, hey, what's happening with you? Are you okay? You know, I don't agree with this, but are you okay? You know, whatever it might be. And had we done that 20 some years ago, we may not have lost that time that we could have been doing life together.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something like a spiritual practice in general that I'm really trying, is to not assume the worst of people, and to try to assume maybe the better, you know, before like jumping to a conclusion. Do you know what I mean? Like assume the better with people that you know you can, and then have a conversation to confirm that, I guess, or affirm that, if you really are not completely connecting with that idea, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a good practice. And, you know, sometimes we just got to love people even when they're offended. I'm sorry. If you were to tell me, hey, don't call me anymore, I didn't like that video that you sent me, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. I'm sorry, but I would have called you. I probably would have showed up at your house. So there are things that we I don't know, I feel like we need to pursue people with love, even when, for whatever reason, they want to retract. As long as it's genuine love and not self-satisfying or serving, maybe is the right word, self-serving. You know, love is something I feel like has been perverted, and I say that intentionally, based on the culture that we we are living in. And I don't think people do it intentionally. I think we do it based on what our background is, what our experience is, what culture's saying to us. But at the end of the day, genuine love covers. It covers people. It does, just like I was saying when that lady come alongside that woman who spilled all that stuff at the store. It covers. It comes alongside. It never pushes away. It never judges. It stands strong and assuring, so that people can discover who they are in Christ.
Yes. Well, we are coming up on the end of the show. I feel like this has been a good conversation. And I think it's like, for us, just sharing that, like, I think sometimes we get on here and it's all cute and we're talking, it is what it is, but it is challenging at times. And it is like something that we have to really be vulnerable with one another. And, we are in the way that we, because we're human, I guess, we're preparing ourselves. We're giving the power, if you will, to hurt one another. And that is a very sacred and special thing. That is not our intent, but we're still giving each other permission to potentially, hurt one another. And that's not in a way, do you know what I mean? Like, we don't do that with everybody. I don't do that with everybody. So I just want people to know that sometimes it's uncomfortable for us, for both of us. But there's so much that comes from just having the conversation.
Oh yeah. We've committed that we're gonna love each other no matter what our differences are.
Agreed. So, well, it looks like Isaac has a great long statement, so we'll maybe go out with that, and then call it a day. So Isaac says, Bonnie, that was an incredibly real and vulnerable statement. I'm right there with you. I had a realization that I and many queer folks have suffered trauma from religious institutions. Sometimes our trauma button in our mind gets pushed by religious language and symbols. It is so hard to unpack, and yet it is also so important to do in our own time to heal. I still find that I get uncomfy in religious spaces, even though I seek to be ordained within them. Yeah. That's one of the things that I've really tried to do. Is like, I feel like our body is telling us, like, when we have like those trigger or those things that cause that in us, I think that's our body telling us something. And for me, instead of like running from it, which is usually what I do, I try to get curious about it. I try to investigate and wonder, why is it that you're feeling this way? And I do feel like it does take like a certain amount of care, because I think you can try to get into that pain too much and it can overwhelm you. So I think it's important to be able to take care of yourself and, do that in whatever way that can feel okay, but not to just completely run from something just because it's feeling like that. Maybe that's not a feeling to run. Maybe that's just a feeling to like investigate. Maybe.
Perspective. I don't have anything to add to that.
Okay. Do you want to take us out? Is there anything you would like to share on your way out?
Yeah, I just want to encourage everyone, find a foundation. I'm a Christian, and my foundation is the Bible. So if I found a foundation, it allows me to move forward from there. And find a foundation that you can stand on. I think that the Bible is a great choice. And to tell you otherwise would be a lie. The Bible is a foundational piece that if we focus on that, and we focus on that foundation, some of these other things that we have to manage and oversee and overcome can do that through the wisdom that comes from those pages. So, as we share our lives with you, as we share the things that we struggle with, that still struggle with, have struggled with, we'll continue to find new things to struggle with. I want you to know that for me, my foundation is the Word of God. I'm strong in that, and I'm grateful that people around me don't try to take that from me. They allow me the opportunity to stand firm on what I believe and who I am in Christ. And for me, and I don't know, I believe the world is called to be a part of that foundation. So I encourage you, find a foundation, a starting point, pursue who you believe God's called you to be, and be open to the people around you that's in your peripheral, because I think they're there for a purpose.
Yeah. Well, I feel like the foundation is, for me, the foundation is what it sets on. It's not what actually is built upon it. And so I think part of that for me is also being able to sit with the foundation, but also challenge myself to see, and this is just what's coming to mind for me, is like, that's the foundation, which for me, I have a foundation that I fall into when I need to feel grounded, when I need to just kind of, like feel connected. But I do feel like there's an element of building upon that foundation that is, I think might be more imaginative. Like it might not be so clear. It might not have even been written yet, in my understanding, that maybe there's more to be written and more to be said. Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's just where I'm at with my foundation. It's hard for me to, and I know this isn't us about like trying to like change one another, but it's really hard for me with my understanding of the Bible now to see myself reflected in there. And so I don't feel like that can be my foundation alone until I'm able to really like hear and explore and learn more, I guess. So, and I know that that's not necessarily our tensions with one another, but I feel like that's what hits for me when I hear that.
Yeah. Thank you guys. It's been an hour already. Oh my goodness. So I appreciate you guys being gracious with us with some of our technical difficulties. Thanks for joining our conversation today. I feel like we just barely scratched the surface of some of the areas that we could have went today. So this may be something we come back around to again sometime. But thank you guys for joining us. If you have extra things that you'd like to add to the conversation, please feel free. We kind of watch this after the show and we're happy to engage. If you want to talk deeper about certain aspects of who we are as people, as people of faith and our spirituality, we are open to doing that. So enjoy your week, and I look forward to our next conversation.
All right. Thank you so much. And Juan says, thank you, ladies and Isaac. Love the vulnerability and intimacy, which lays out a daily foundation. Take care, and I'll play that outro. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Splintered Grace podcast is brought to you by a queer chaplain. Follow us on all of our social medias, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook at a queer chaplain. Listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe, comment, like, and share. Feel free to tip us at Venmo, Bonnie Violet, and support monthly on Patreon. The song is original by Steven Sandnoff, The Chasm Between Us. Rest in peace, Steven.